New Year's resolutions are an interesting thing, aren't they? I mean, really, what's happening there is it's a day change from one year to the next, but literally, it's just an overnight thing. Physically, on a grander scale, the Earth has revolved around the sun. We've been traveling through space on this planet. There is astronomically a change that is taking place, but what I'm really contemplating here is more so about the emotional aspects of the New Year's transition. We collectively make a big deal out of it. I mean, we throw in celebrations, we throw in grand spectacles of fireworks, we usher in the new year together. And we make a collective agreement in a lot of ways about letting the old year go. And that includes all the old intentions, the trauma, the things that we've been through, our old habits, our unskillful habits, and we also agree together with a tremendous amount of goodwill that we're going to do better heading into the new year. We collectively agree individually that we will do better some way, somehow, but we'll create these resolutions. We've got these ideas in our mind about how we can be better moving into the new year. The thing about resolutions, though, is that collective good energy and goodwill starts dissipating. I mean, it gets pretty weird to say Happy New Year past the second week of January to somebody. But what I mean by that is third week, fourth week of January, life is life. And February, March, you're into the year. It's established, and every day just feels like another day. And those resolutions may or may not have the same fortitude that you had or one had on New Year's Eve heading into the new year. I mean, the great example of that is you go into a gym the first week of January, it's absolutely packed. There's a lot of new folks who have determined that they're going to get fit and healthy. By the time the third week of January rolls around, it starts thinning out pretty rapidly. And then February, especially into March, it's back to the usual crowd with maybe a few folks who've really managed to adhere to their resolutions or their new habit structures. And I've been there. I mean, this is characteristic of, I think, everyone with respect to what we all go through. But for me, these last few years, I've implemented something new that's really helped in terms of bolstering how to make my resolutions stick. And today I want to talk about just that. And that is my vision board for the upcoming year, my vision for how the upcoming year is going to look and how I'm going to make these resolutions stick. I'm really making this video for myself. It's my version of uploading my process onto my channel as a future reference. Also, I hope it helps my kids when they get older, and if this video is still around or if YouTube is still around, that they've got a reference that might be helpful to them as they're going through these similar contemplations and strategies. So I got to be a little bit careful when I talk about making my resolutions stick. The thing I really have been reflecting on a lot on and I've really understood is that we're all just really human beings. We're continual processes of being exposed to external stimuli, information, and we are constantly evaluating that under our own perception of who we are and how we are acting and making adjustments, perhaps consciously and subconsciously as we go through this. So when I say making resolutions stick, I'm looking at it from the perspective of what is serving me? Are these resolutions, these determinations that I made on New Year's Eve, continuing to work for me heading into the year and throughout the year? Resolutions are, well, they're firm decisions. We make them. We've had some percolation of thought processes heading in towards the end of the year about all the things that we wish we could have done better, all the things we want to learn to be different versions of ourselves, perhaps, or to continue building on the things that we really bolstered or strengthened about ourselves. We also look at our faults and some of the tough stuff that we've been through the past year, and where you sit there wondering, how can I do this better? That's the genesis, I think, of resolutions. We make these determinations on New Year's Eve collectively. We might voice them out loud. We might write them privately to ourselves. And we say, I resolve to do this heading into the new year. Sometimes they could be at a very surface level, right? I'll talk about myself here, whether it's surface level to you or not. I'll leave that aside. But surface level to me could be something like, I want to look really good, topless on a beach, in June or something like that. That's a really high level determination, I suppose. But it can also translate into, I want to work out and look jacked, something like that. So these are these resolutions. No matter what they are, these determinations, if we leave them there, these firm decisions, that's all they really are, is just a decision. But there's nothing that really puts in place how to act on these resolutions, how to enact these resolutions. And that collective goodwill and energy that I was talking about, as I said, lasts for a short duration into the new year. And then we're suddenly individually by ourselves again and contemplating our individual resolutions without the full context or the full broader support, I suppose, of that global energy of, yes, we can let the past stuff about ourselves go and carry the new stuff about ourselves into the future. So we're largely left a little bit by ourselves. We might have shared our resolutions with other folks. We might have similar resolutions with other folks. And it's really up to that momentum to carry us forward with these resolutions. How do I make those stick? Well, to me, it's really about creating strategies around these resolutions and visualizing that, writing this down, analyzing it, dissolving it, and taking a look at it a few different ways. Hence my vision board. Now, when I say vision board, what do I mean by that? Well, vision boards are not a new concept. They're around everywhere. You just go on Pinterest and it's basically vision board after vision board after vision board. But when I talk about vision boards, and in particular a vision board with respect to the resolutions, more so the upcoming year, I'm really talking about a visual representation of the resolutions and goals and things like that, but an overall strategy, something that you can look at and remind yourself about what you had as a vision for the upcoming year. And also, as you're getting exposed to the external stimuli of life and internal stimuli of life on a day-to-day basis, as one navigates throughout the year, having a board that you can evaluate that against and course correct, alter, or resolve to continue on with the exact same strategy that you had in mind. So vision board to me is really, what are we working towards? It's a summation of what are we working towards, a vision that we're working towards, and how are we distilling that down into some meaningful ways of representing that back to ourselves. And course correcting, as I said, evaluating, as I said, and also navigating forward more than anything else. So it's really a strategy. Now, my vision boards, I kind of break into three areas, and we'll take a look at this in closer detail. But it's really taking those resolutions and, like I said, bolstering them with a little bit more thought process around guiding principles. So that's what my first section really will be, is I am a person who looks like this or does this, etc., etc. And then what I'm letting go of heading into the new year, that's the second area of my vision board that I will write down and just make sure that I really have clear. Because those old habit patterns and structures, they'll come up. Nothing really changes in a day. It takes effort to create new habit structures, and it takes effort to let go of old habits. And then the last thing I'll have in my vision board is really a narrative around, okay, what are the major goals that I'm working on? So this is effectively the resolutions, but maybe a little bit more creativity, a little bit more precision with what those resolutions are really trying to be defined as. And then when I really talk about resolutions, I'm talking about it in terms of, how does this help in terms of who I want to be, these guiding principles that I'm creating, and the strategy that I want to invoke with respect to the vision I have for my life heading into the year. Resolutions into strategy. So let's talk about strategy. What does the strategy encompass? Well, strategy to me really is this idea of a plan, a narrative of, okay, it's a broader vision, hence the vision board, in terms of how I'm going to enact these resolutions, how I'm going to make these things happen, how I'm going to put into practice what I want to put into practice so that I am practicing what I want to put into practice. That's a mouthful. But that is strategy to me. And really, I like to look at the strategy from a high level perspective. These resolutions, these determinations that I'm making, these goals that I'm setting, they're usually pretty specific. I want to work out 3 times a week. I want to read 40 books in a year. These determinations, I like to look at them, contemplate them, reflect on them, and try and look at it from the perspective of what am I addressing? What am I trying to address with these specific actions, perhaps? Maybe my goal is a little bit more broader. I would like to be emotionally resilient by the end of 2025. What does that mean? What am I trying to address? I would like to stop drinking by the end of 2025. Okay, what does that mean? What am I trying to address? There's deeper meanings to all of these things, right? So I want to try and spend some time taking a look at these deeper meanings. One of the things that I do when I'm looking at these deeper meanings is start mind mapping, just visually trying to create an idea of, okay, 2025 here, right? What do I have? Here's 2024, some of the things that worked, some of the things that I accomplished, a lot of the stuff that I learned, maybe what I haven't necessarily learned, gaps, and start forming an idea of, okay, 2025, what does that look like? What does my health look like? What does my finances look like? Routines. So I'm starting to just jot down some broad narratives here with respect to, okay, where are we going with these resolutions here? And I might do that ahead of time. As I said, I start contemplating in September. I start really reflecting in November and solidifying some of this kind of stuff down. So that's kind of step one for me, is just these high level mind maps. So one of the questions I like to ask myself is, what are 10 things I want for myself? Now, this doesn't necessarily have to be constrained to the upcoming year. This is just a broader definition or broader open-ended question for my life in general. What do I look like? What do I want by the time I'm 40 or 50 or 60 or 70? What does that look like? What do those 10 things look like from the perspective of, have they changed from the last time I wrote those 10 things? And am I heading in the direction that I want? For example, I want to live in a country house by the time I'm 70, or maybe it's not even that specific. I just want to live in a country house. So if I really look at that from the perspective of the things that I'm doing today and in the past year, have I actually been working towards that? Have I been putting money away? Have I been exploring property outside of the city? What does that even look like? Do I have a visualization of that? I want to be really healthy, emotionally resilient. These are big concepts. So I might write some of the stuff down in terms of 10 things, and I'll look at it from past years and I look at it and go, have these 10 things changed? And I'm, really just kind of trying to understand how I'm navigating through and what's changing for me on a day-to-day basis. Mind maps, 10 things I want for my life. And then step number 3 here will really be, what do I look like, or how do I look and act by the end of the upcoming year? So now I'm trying to get a little bit more specific. I've taken a look at the past year. I've contemplated a little bit or reflected through that high level mind map reflections. The 10 the 10 things I want for myself is kind of like a really far future thinking, perhaps. It's really broadening up an overall idea of how I'm creating my life. And now I'm trying to get a little bit more specific in terms of a timeline. How do I look and act by the end of the upcoming year? What does that look like? How does Frank look like? And I'll write a couple pages here where I'm just contemplating this future version of myself. How does he respond to things? How does he look at life? What's changed for him? What hasn't necessarily changed for him? What is he built on in terms of his strengths? What does he let go of? And, when he's looking at being emotionally resilient, for example, what does that look like? How does he respond to some of the tough stuff that comes up in life, as it inevitably does, right? What is he learning, and how does he present himself in the world? So this is the information that I've got in terms of forming these strategies. Is The mind map's the reflection of the past year, a little bit into the future, but just a high level thinking. The 10 things that I want for myself, not necessarily time constrained, just this idea of designing my life. And then the third thing here is getting really specific with how I want to look, act, and feel, or how that might be perceived for the upcoming year. Now, taking all of this, these three things, I start forming my guiding pillars. This is where I get a little bit more specific. These three things have informed me in terms of the narrative that I want to create. And guiding pillars to me is these foundations. This is the stuff that I can come back to. I might not necessarily be there with respect to some of the pillars that I'm putting down, but more broadly, it is who I want to be. What is this idea of, if I could follow through with this guiding pillar, that would be how I have addressed these resolutions. I have in some way put into practice the stuff that I want to be. So I'm creating a self out of this with respect to this vision that I have. And that's where the guiding pillars, I think, are really important. So to give you a few examples here, I'll just read mine from 2025. I am a person who grounds and works on himself and is focused on his own well-being so he can be of benefit to others and himself. It's broad, but it's also kind of a vision. It's giving me some specifics there. It doesn't necessarily get very prescriptive, but it's giving me some idea of this individual that I have in mind. I am a father to kids who feel loved and safe, and a husband in an amazing marriage where both people are building their lives together. So again, it's giving me some direction. This is how I'm informing myself every day when I look at this list of guiding principles. A person who likes to learn, is open to feedback, is adventurous, and has a side hustle that they enjoy. So these are some of the things that start informing the narrative that I want to create for myself. These are my guiding principles. Now, the second thing that I do on my vision board is this year I'm letting go of. Now, this is important to me because it takes some of that mind map reflection of the past year. It takes the resolutions in context, and it's really looking at, okay, if I want to be more fit and healthy, then I have to look at things that I'm trying to let go of with respect to my own habit structures that have been established that are getting in the way of creating this new habit or new resolution, new goal, and enacting it. So if I want to be fit and healthy, then I should probably let go of eating junk food all the time, for example. But maybe on a broader level, with respect to being fit and healthy, I'm going to let go of this narrative that I can't be fit and healthy because of health reasons or whatever it is. So this year I'm letting go of is really just a encapsulation of what are the things that are going to get in the way of supporting my guiding principles, this vision that I have for myself, these resolutions that I've created. To give you a few examples on what's on my list here, this year I'm letting go of caring what other people think of me. I care a lot, and this year I really want to focus in on, okay, you know what? It doesn't necessarily matter as much anymore. I'm at this milestone in my life where I can take a step back and say, yeah, I've been around a chunk of time, and I think I know where I'm adding value and where I can't add value. And these perceptions that people have of me, well, I can get bogged down in that, and I just don't have time for it anymore. I want to let go of some of that. If it's good feedback, I want to listen to it for sure. And I've got to get very comfortable with that. But if it's just noise, then I don't want to introduce that much noise in my life. So this is what it's trying to encompass. When I look at that statement, caring what other people think of me, letting go of that, this is what it reminds me of. This is an idea of some of the past year stuff and previous year stuff that I really want to work on. So I'm creating these guiding principles, this vision for how I want my life. And I'm also looking at, okay, what am I tweaking in the background? What am I reminding myself in terms of when the days get tough? This is what I'm going to remind myself to let go of. And then the last section I have in here is major goals. So this is effectively resolutions, but like I said, I try to get a little bit more specific. I mean, you can make them SMART goals if you want, but I get them specific. If my resolution is to get fit and healthy, I want to be a little bit more specific than that. I will put down a few goals that support that. For example, work out consistently at least 3 times a week. 3 times a week is very smart in terms of it's measurable. It's a realistic goal. And I have an idea of, okay, this is how I'm going to get fit and healthy. Part of that is another supporting goal is to we can establish a consistent daily, weekly routine in order to do that. Run an 8-week tactical barbell base building conditioning before I go and do heavy weightlifting, things like that. Learn 3 songs on the guitar completely. Again, just that's a bit more specific. Read 40 non-fiction books, 10 fiction books. What is the resolution that goal is supporting? Well, for me, that resolution is I want to be well-read, well learned, and I want to broaden my topics and areas of understanding. So these are some of what my major goals are, is taking some time to navigate through the strategy, my guiding principles, the stuff that I'm letting go of, and distilling that down into the goals that I think are a little bit more succinct, a little bit more definitive, and are a little bit more prescriptive, perhaps in some ways, when it comes to supporting these resolutions. It's a vision board, so I've got to visualize this, and the idea here is to, what I do at least, is type this all up. It's a summation, as I said, in 3 areas: guiding principles this year I'm letting go of, major goals this year include, but I also like to put in some visual reminders, visual indicators. I am a visual thinker, so I'll basically put in very direct images that addresses these things in a nutshell. So when I look at it, it is a quick reminder to myself as I'm looking and reading through this day on day. Halfway through the year, I've got this basically memorized, and I just need the images to remind myself what I'm looking at or what I'm working towards. This vision board, I've got 2 copies. One hangs on my wall at all times beside my desk. So when I'm sitting at my desk, I can look over there and it's right there. It's very clear. The second copy, I put it in my A5 portfolio or journal, so I can pull it out as I'm reflecting and journaling and things like that. And some of the things that I'm contemplating I can evaluate against my vision board here. Now, you might ask me why I go through all this effort. Well, as I said, it's really trying to make sure that the resolutions stick, that I've got a strategy around the resolutions, that I've got a plan in place, more or less. I've got some guiding principles of how I want my life to look, how I'm creating my life. But the other thing that these vision boards really help with are when the days get tough. Life is hard and stuff will happen, whether it's external, whether it's internal, whether you're expecting it. Usually it's when you're not expecting it. And on those days, the vision board to me is really, really important, because it's something that I can go back towards and say, look, this is the stuff that I can control, and everything else I can't. This is how I want to show up. This is what I want to keep working on. And when I get stuck into a habit pattern that is old, that isn't serving me very well, then I can remind myself with a visual cue, well, this is what I wanted to do. And am I really doing that? Is this serving me right now? And that's what the vision board to me really is this serving me? And it really becomes a very clear strategy of how to navigate for me day to day throughout the upcoming year. What happens when things shift in your understanding, in your knowledge, and you've got something that really challenges what you've put down for your vision board? Well, this is where I think resolutions, if you leave it at just that, don't necessarily serve you. But having something like this in terms of a vision board or strategy does serve you, because you can take the new information, this new data that you have that's questioning whether you're heading in the right direction, and reevaluate and change. And I might do that. I've done that a couple of years ago, where I took my vision board for 2023, for example, and I just halfway through the year said, well, I've just had this major shift in my life. The strategy that I had in place is not going to serve me to support this major shift. So I'm going to redo it. And I did. I just printed off another copy, marked it up, and went through the exercise of saying, okay, this is what I need to tweak. And I put that up, and that's how I was able to navigate through that. That might sound pretentious. Well, Frank, yeah, you're taking a lot of time to sit down and really reflect, contemplate. You're printing off nice little things like this. What about folks who are really busy in their life and don't necessarily have the luxury to do this? And yes, I suppose it could be viewed as pretentious from that way. And I am very fortunate to have the luxury of time, space, tools available for me to contemplate in a way that I do. And also, I look at it from the perspective of really an investment, taking a scheduled break, perhaps, maybe it's informal, and looking at this from the perspective of building on that collective goodwill and viewing it also in the narrative of an investment in myself. Not necessarily myself today, but sure, absolutely. But the self that I will have in a day from now, and a week from now, and a month from now, but certainly by the end of the upcoming year. So the lens that I look at it is really that the luxury of taking time to contemplate, to write this stuff down, to really broaden my idea of building on resolutions is truly an investment. This is the stuff that I am going to take some time and energy to do in the business of everybody's life. And everybody's life looks different. My contemplations, as I tend to do, starting in September of every year, I start percolating on, okay, what has worked and what is working really well and what hasn't started, what has started coming undone perhaps in some ways. And then it really gets clear in November. There's a sense of wrapping things up or carrying the burdens of the past year into the next year, and you're starting to get aware of that kind of stuff. I'll take some time just writing a few things down here and there and collating this all together in terms of creating a strategy. The other important thing that I'd like to stress here is the transition between December 31st to January 1st. There can be a lot of added pressure that one puts on themselves to have it all figured out. You make your resolutions on New Year's Eve, and you're supposed to enact them January 1st or within the first week of January. You're supposed to figure out how to employ these resolutions and make them work right away. I'm not a big believer in that. Personally, I like to take time to contemplate, as I've already mentioned. But if we take a look at a mind map, for example, here, yes, I've taken the first stab here on the 27th of December. But even prior to this, there was a lot of notes in my traveler's notebook catch-all in terms of just thoughts throughout the year that I would flip back at and start populating some high-level thoughts into this mind map. And then when you really look at it from the perspective of, okay, what does a timeline look like for me this year? And it's been different in different years. I start writing those questions, on the 29th. Like this is a couple days before New Year's Eve. 10 things I want for myself. So I'm really taking the time to contemplate that. The day before New Year's Eve, I'm still thinking through, okay, how does Frank look and act like? Other things that I've got in here as well is, okay, on the first, I'm still thinking about, hey, things I'm letting go for the upcoming year or from the past year, some major goals. So I'm using this kind of as a springboard, even on the first. The thing that I'm trying to say is don't be necessarily rushed in this process. Don't feel like you've got to get it all figured out so that you're ready for the first. Take some time. In other years, it's been almost the second week of January before I've gotten really clear on what I'm trying to achieve or what my strategy or game plan is. So I'm just really cautious of, not necessarily adding extra pressure, but still having the intentions in mind as we go through this in the year. And then my vision board, well, it's really nothing fancy. However you want to represent it, digitally, analog, however you want to do it. This is a format that works for me. And this is, something that's really clear and concise, has it all laid out, has the visual indicators, and has the right words in my mind to make this work for me. So I think vision boards around resolutions are really, really important for me. It allows me to, as I said, I'm being quite repetitive, and I gave this video, I suppose, is for myself. It allows me to create that strategy, to implement that strategy, to live that strategy, to evaluate that strategy, and take in all that goodwill and collective wonderful energy in the New Year's transition and do something meaningful with it throughout the year, not just within the first few weeks of January. And I think that also serves as a springboard for future years, for this definition of the things that I want for myself and for the folks around me that are important to me. So that's how I make a resolution stick. I share sometimes my vision board with pretty close people in my life so that they can hold me accountable. And sometimes they're willing to share their stuff with me so I can try and hold them accountable. So accountability partners are really good for making resolutions stick. And also, I suppose, just in a larger sense, creating some discipline around these kinds of things with respect to routines and structures that one implements around resolutions. Perhaps that's very prescriptive, but I find having, for me at least, wanting to have flexibility and flow in my life, I actually have to be pretty structured and rigid in some aspects to let that creativity flow naturally. I hope this was helpful or interesting, certainly for future Frank here. And I also am curious about you. What do you do to make your resolution stick? Let me know in the comment section below if you've got strategies similar to my idea of vision boards and how to wrap your resolutions into a grander narrative, or what resolutions really work for you and this is how you do it. I'd love to hear about it. Let me know in the comments section below. Thanks very much for joining me. Have a wonderful day, and bye for now.